Wake up to the fact that the reality you see, touch, and suffer through every day is not real. If physics has already proven that the material world is made almost entirely of vibrating empty space, why do you keep exhausting your mind trying to fix circumstances that don't even exist the way you believe they do? What, or who, is projecting this relentless illusion in front of you right now? Pause for a moment and notice your body. The tension you carry is not coming from life itself, but from how you've been taught to interpret it. You've been trained to react to appearances as if they were solid, final, unquestionable. But what if they are not? What if this constant pressure you feel is not proof that life is hard, but a sign that you are misreading it? There is something deeper watching, something silent behind every thought and reaction, and the moment you become aware of it, even slightly, the weight begins to shift. The exhaustion starts to fade, not because the world changed, but because you are no longer fully trapped inside the illusion. You know that horrible feeling of waking up early, working hard, trying to do everything right, and at the end of the day, realizing that your problems haven't moved at all. That exhaustion crushing your chest is not a lack of ability. It is the painful result of spending your entire life trying to fix the reflection in the mirror with your own hands, instead of changing the posture of the one standing in front of it. There is something deeply frustrating about giving your best effort and seeing no real shift. You adjust your schedule, push your limits, think more, plan more, react faster, and still, life seems to return the same patterns. It feels like resistance is everywhere, like reality itself is pushing back against you. But what if that resistance is not coming from the world at all? What if you are locked in a silent loop, reacting to an image that only exists because of the way you are standing internally? Think about a mirror for a moment. If the reflection looks tense, you don't reach into the glass to relax its shoulders. You don't try to smooth its expression with your hands. That would be absurd. And yet, this is exactly what most people do with life. They see a problem, financial stress, conflict, uncertainty, and immediately try to manipulate the external scene as if the image itself had independent power. This is where the illusion becomes dangerous. Because it looks solid, it feels urgent, it convinces you that everything is happening out there, separate from you, demanding action, demanding control. And so you respond the only way you were taught, by forcing, fixing, chasing, resisting. But every time you do that, something subtle happens. You confirm to your own system that the reflection is real. And once that confirmation is repeated enough times, your entire experience begins to organize around it. The more you fight, the more real it feels. The more real it feels, the harder you fight. It becomes a closed circuit of effort and frustration, where energy is constantly spent, but nothing truly changes at the root. That's why the exhaustion feels so heavy. It's not just physical tiredness, it's the weight of misdirected energy. You are investing your attention in a surface that cannot be altered directly, and deep down, some part of you knows this isn't working. Have you ever noticed how certain problems seem to follow you even when the external conditions change? Different job, same stress. Different people, same conflicts. Different goals, same sense of being stuck. It's like the scenery updates, but the script remains untouched. That's not coincidence, that's reflection. And once you begin to see it this way, something uncomfortable starts to surface. If the outer world behaves like a mirror, then reacting to it emotionally, impulsively, desperately, is like reinforcing the very posture that created the image in the first place. This is where most people tighten even more, because the instinct is to do something, to act, to fix, to control. Standing still or stepping back internally can feel like giving up. It can feel passive, even irresponsible. But look closer. Is what you've been doing actually working? Or has it just been keeping you busy inside the illusion? There's a difference between action that comes from clarity and action that comes from pressure. One reorganizes reality, the other feeds the loop. And if you're honest, most of the effort that drains you comes from reacting too quickly to what you see, without questioning the source of what you're seeing. It's like waking up inside a simulation and immediately believing every signal it sends you. Every notification becomes urgent. Every problem becomes solid. Every discomfort becomes proof that something is wrong outside. So you move faster, you think harder, You try to outwork the system, but the system you're trying to beat is being shaped moment by moment by the way you are observing it. And that leads to a quiet but powerful question that almost no one asks early enough. What am I doing right after I open my eyes each day that locks me back into this same reflection? The worst part is that there is a silent error, a dangerous habit that you commit involuntarily in the first minutes after waking up, and it drains your entire ability to prosper. This mistake chains you to a continuous cycle of repetition and scarcity. Later, I will reveal how to deactivate this biological trap in a very simple way. But first you need to understand what this world that scares you is made of. Right after you wake up, before you even sit up or take a full breath, something automatic happens. Your mind starts scanning. It checks your life like a radar looking for problems. It remembers what is missing, what is delayed, what feels uncertain. It pulls images from yesterday, unfinished conversations, numbers, pressures, and within seconds your body follows. Your chest tightens a little. Your stomach contracts. Your thoughts become heavier, more urgent. Without noticing, you have already stepped back into the same emotional position you held the day before. This is the habit. It feels normal because you've repeated it thousands of times, but it is not neutral. It is not harmless. It is the moment where you unconsciously choose how you will relate to reality for the rest of the day. And here is where the illusion quietly locks in. Because the moment you accept those first thoughts and sensations as a direct response to a real world outside you, you stop questioning them. You assume they are justified. You assume they are necessary. It feels like you are simply reacting to life as it is. But you are not reacting to life as it is. You are reacting to a mental reconstruction of what you believe life is. That reconstruction is built from memory, expectation, and fear. It is not happening in the present moment. It is a projection. And yet your body responds as if it were immediate and real. This is how the cycle sustains itself. You wake up, reconnect to the same internal state, and then move through the day, perceiving everything through that filter. Opportunities look smaller. Problems look bigger. Neutral situations feel loaded. People seem more difficult. And by the end of the day, your experience matches the state you started with. Not because the world forced it, but because your perception organized it. That's why it feels like nothing changes. Because the starting point never changes. And the most dangerous part is how invisible this is. No one teaches you to notice those first minutes. There is no alarm telling you this is the moment where your entire day is being shaped. It happens quietly, beneath your awareness, like a background program running without permission. If you pay close attention, you might catch it tomorrow. That instant where your mind says, "Here we go again." That subtle drop in energy before anything has even happened. That assumption that today will carry the same weight as yesterday. It's almost mechanical, and once it begins, everything else follows automatically. You reach for your phone, you check messages, you confirm delays, problems, comparisons. Each input strengthens the same internal posture. It's like adding layers to a structure that was already set the moment you opened your eyes. The illusion doesn't need to convince you all day long. It only needs a small window in the beginning. After that, you do the rest. You reinforce it with attention, with interpretation, with emotional reaction. And by the time you realize you feel stuck or overwhelmed, the pattern is already fully active. But here's something most people overlook. If this habit is strong enough to freeze your life in place, it also reveals something else. It means your experience is highly sensitive to how you begin. It means the system is not fixed. It is responsive. It is being shaped from the inside, even if it doesn't feel that way. That idea can feel uncomfortable at first, because it removes the excuse that everything is happening to you, but it also opens a door that most people never walk through. Because if your first thoughts are not neutral, if your first emotional state is not just a reaction, then what exactly are you interacting with when you face the world? What is this reality made of if your inner state can silently script how it unfolds before anything even happens? When quantum physics isolates the smallest particle of a wall or your own body, it does not find something solid and rigid, but rather a network of infinite mathematical possibilities. Experiments like the double slit, have confirmed that the universe only takes a defined form when there is a consciousness directing focus. The walls of your reality only rise at the exact moment you pay attention to them. This is not abstract theory anymore. It's measurable. When particles are not being observed, they behave like waves, spread out, undefined, full of potential. But the moment observation enters the equation, those same particles collapse into a specific location, a specific state, something that looks solid and real. Now pause for a second and let that sink in. What you experience as solid matter, your surroundings, your problems, your daily pressures, at the most fundamental level, are not fixed structures. They are outcomes. They are the result of something being observed, interpreted, and stabilized into form. In simple terms, what you call reality is not as rigid as it appears. It is responsive. This is where the idea of illusion stops being philosophical and starts becoming practical. Because if matter itself does not hold a permanent shape until it is observed, then your experience of life is deeply connected to how you are observing it, not just visually, but mentally and emotionally. Your focus is not passive. It acts like a selector. Out of countless possibilities, it highlights one version and gives it weight. And when you repeatedly focus in the same way, especially with strong emotion, you reinforce that version until it feels like the only one that exists. Think about how this plays out in your daily life. Two people can walk into the same situation and experience completely different realities. One sees opportunity, the other sees risk. One feels calm, the other feels pressure. The environment is the same, but the internal observation is different, and that difference shapes what becomes real for each of them. So when you wake up and immediately lock into stress, lack, or urgency, you are not just reacting to a fixed world. You are participating in selecting which version of that world becomes solid for you, and the more consistent your focus, the more stable that version appears. This is why certain patterns feel so difficult to break. It's not that reality is against you. It's that your observation has become so conditioned, so automatic, that it keeps collapsing the same outcomes over and over again. The illusion gains strength through repetition. But here's where it becomes even more important to understand the deeper layer. Your observation is not just about what you think, it includes how you feel while you are thinking. Emotion acts like an amplifier. It tells your system, this matters, lock this in. And the stronger the emotion, the more quickly a possibility becomes something that feels real and unavoidable. So when fear, frustration, or desperation dominate your attention, you are not just experiencing those emotions, you are helping to solidify the very conditions that reflect them. Not instantly, not magically, but consistently. Over time, this creates a feedback loop. You observe something with tension, that observation reinforces a version of reality. And then that version gives you more reasons to feel tension. It looks like proof, but it's actually a cycle. And once you see this, a new kind of responsibility appears. Not blame, not pressure, but awareness, because if matter at its core is flexible, if it behaves more like a field of possibilities than a fixed structure, then reacting unconsciously to everything you see becomes risky. It means you are constantly shaping outcomes without realizing it. And this is where things can begin to escalate without you noticing. Because what happens when someone consistently observes their life through fear? What happens when every challenge is met with emotional intensity, with resistance, with the assumption that things are getting worse? If observation influences form, then that pattern doesn't stay small. It grows. It compounds. It starts organizing reality in a way that matches that internal state more and more closely. And that's the point where the illusion stops being just misleading and starts becoming overwhelming. And this is where ignoring this universal rule becomes a devastating danger. If particles react to your observation, what happens when you react with deep desperation to a debt or a conflict? The problem escalates rapidly. By validating external chaos with pain and fear, you force the universe to materialize increasingly critical blockages in your life. You are literally pouring cement into your own prison. At first, it doesn't look like something serious. It feels like a normal reaction. You see a bill you can't pay, a message you didn't want to receive, a situation that seems out of control. Your body reacts instantly. Your heart speeds up, your thoughts race, and your attention locks onto the problem as if your survival depends on it. In that moment, it feels justified to worry. It feels responsible to analyze every detail, to imagine worst-case scenarios, to try to force a solution as quickly as possible. But this is exactly where the illusion tightens its grip, because what feels like dealing with reality is often just feeding it with more intensity. You are not just seeing the problem, you are energizing it. You are giving it emotional weight, focus, and repetition, and through that, you are reinforcing its presence in your experience. Think of it like this. If your observation acts like a signal, then fear is a very loud signal. It tells your system, this matters a lot. Keep this active. Keep showing me more of this. And without realizing it, your perception begins to filter everything through that frequency. Small issues start to look bigger. Neutral situations start to feel threatening. Even opportunities can feel like risks. The external world may not have changed that much, but your experience of it becomes heavier, more chaotic, more urgent. And then something subtle happens. You begin to act from that state. You send messages with tension behind your words. You make decisions too quickly or avoid them completely. You lose clarity, patience, and timing. And those actions, shaped by pressure, often create new complications. Now, the situation actually does become more complex. But it didn't start that way. It grew. It escalated through layers of reaction, each one adding more structure to something that initially may have been flexible, even manageable. This is how the illusion builds what feels like solid walls around you. Not all at once, but gradually, through repeated emotional investment. Every moment of panic, every assumption of failure, every internal narrative of this is getting worse, acts like another layer of reinforcement. And after a while it feels undeniable. It feels like proof that life is difficult, that problems are multiplying, that things are out of your control. But if you trace it back carefully, you'll see that what you're experiencing now is not just the original situation. It is the accumulation of how you've been relating to it. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing a mechanism that most people never question, because from the outside, it always looks like the problem is the cause of your stress. But from the inside, your sustained reaction is what gives the problem its lasting form. And here's where it becomes even more critical. The body doesn't know the difference between an immediate physical threat and a mentally constructed one. So when you keep revisiting the same fear, the same worry, the same imagined outcomes, your system stays in a constant state of alert. This drains your energy. It narrows your perception. It makes everything feel more urgent than it actually is. And in that state, you lose access to the very qualities that could shift the situation: clarity, patience, timing, creativity. So the more you react, the less capable you feel. And the less capable you feel, the more you react. This is how chaos escalates, not just outside you, but within you. And once it takes hold internally, it starts organizing your external experience in ways that match it. That's when people begin to say things like, everything is going wrong, or nothing ever works out. It feels real because the pattern has become consistent. But consistency doesn't always mean truth. Sometimes it just means repetition. The illusion becomes convincing when it is repeated enough times, with enough emotion behind it. But there is a point where this cycle can be interrupted, not by forcing the world to change, and not by ignoring problems, but by changing the way you meet them in the exact moment they appear. And this is where an unexpected kind of power begins to emerge, one that doesn't come from control, but from something much quieter. Millennia before modern laboratories existed, the sages who guarded the principles of the secret scroll had already mastered this mental technology. To stop the loss of energy and prevent problems from escalating, there is an immediate escape valve: non-reaction. When a crisis appears today and you consciously choose not to inject emotion into it, the mirage loses its electrical force at the exact moment you assume neutrality. At first, this can sound unrealistic, almost like you're being asked to become indifferent or passive. But that's not what this is. Non-reaction is not about pretending something doesn't matter. It is about refusing to fuel the illusion with automatic emotional intensity. There is a difference between seeing a problem clearly and collapsing into it. Most people don't notice the gap between those two moments. The event happens, and within a fraction of a second, the reaction is already in motion. The body tightens, the mind accelerates, and the story begins. It feels immediate, almost unavoidable. But that tiny gap is where everything changes. The sages understood something simple and powerful. You don't control what appears in front of you, but you do influence what it becomes next. And the fastest way to distort any situation is to meet it with uncontrolled emotion. So instead of reacting, they trained themselves to pause internally. Not a dramatic pause, not something visible to others, just a subtle shift, a breath that interrupts the automatic pattern, a moment where you observe what is happening without labeling it as good or bad, urgent or catastrophic. In that moment, the illusion weakens, because without your emotional charge, the situation loses part of its structure. It stops expanding, it stops pulling more attention, it remains what it is, without growing into something heavier. You can test this in very small situations. The next time something unexpected happens, a delay, a mistake, a message that triggers you, notice the first impulse to react. Feel how quickly your body wants to move into tension, and instead of following that impulse, just hold your attention steady for a few seconds. Don't suppress anything, just don't add anything. Let the situation exist without your immediate interpretation. What you'll notice is subtle but important. The intensity doesn't spike the way it usually does. The problem doesn't disappear, but it also doesn't expand. It stays contained. This is not magic, it's regulation. And over time, this changes how reality organizes itself around you. Because when you stop feeding every disturbance with emotional energy, fewer disturbances grow into real complications. You begin to move through situations with more clarity. Your actions become more precise, less reactive. And that alone starts to shift outcomes. But there's another layer that is even more important. Non-reaction exposes something that most people avoid seeing. It shows you how much of your suffering was coming from your interpretation, not the situation itself. That realization can feel uncomfortable at first, because it removes the pravitchka of blaming everything outside. But it also gives you back something you didn't realize you lost: influence over your own state. And from that state, better decisions naturally follow. This doesn't mean you will never feel emotion again. That's not the goal. The goal is to stop letting emotion take control before you have even seen clearly what is in front of you. To respond instead of react. To observe before you engage. And the more you practice this, the more you notice something surprising. Many things that used to feel urgent aren't. Many situations that used to escalate don't. Many problems that seemed solid start to look more flexible. The illusion begins to lose its weight, not because the world changed overnight, but because you stopped reinforcing it in the same way. And as this becomes more natural, a deeper question starts to emerge. If reacting emotionally gives form and strength to what you see, then what exactly are you looking at when you call something present reality? Is it truly happening now, or are you interacting with something that was already set in motion long before this moment? Pay very close attention to this detail, because it changes everything. The chaotic life your eyes are seeing right now is not happening in your present. Your bank account today and your current conflicts are just frozen past. You are suffering and fighting with the projected shadow of frequencies you emitted months or years ago. Trying to change your life based only on what you see now is living permanently behind. This is where the illusion becomes even more convincing, because it tricks you into believing that what you see is happening in real time. It feels immediate, it feels current, it feels like something you must deal with right now, as if it were being created in this exact moment. But what you are actually experiencing is the result of patterns that have already been set in motion. Think of it like receiving a delayed message. By the time it reaches you, it has already been sent, processed, and shaped. Your reaction to it now cannot change the moment it was created. It can only influence what will be sent next. And yet, most people spend their entire lives reacting to what has already happened, as if it were still being decided. This creates a constant sense of frustration. You try to fix things quickly, but nothing seems to respond immediately. You push harder, you worry more, you overanalyze, but the external world moves at its own pace. It doesn't instantly reflect your effort, so it feels like you're stuck. But you're not stuck, you're just out of sync. You're trying to edit a scene that has already been rendered, and this is where a quiet shift needs to happen. Instead of asking, how do I fix what I'm seeing right now? A more accurate question would be, what am I setting in motion today that will become my reality later? Because the present moment is not where your current circumstances are being formed. It is where your future circumstances are being prepared. The illusion hides this by keeping your attention locked on visible results. It convinces you that what matters most is what is already in front of you. But what's in front of you is just evidence. It's not the source. The source is always slightly ahead in the way you're thinking, feeling, and observing right now. This is why reacting emotionally to your current situation is so costly. You are not just responding to the past, you are recreating it. You are sending the same signal forward, ensuring that similar outcomes will appear again. That's the loop, and it continues until you become aware of it. Have you ever noticed how certain phases of your life seem to repeat with different details but the same emotional tone? It's not because time is linear and you're moving forward into something new each day. It's because internally the pattern hasn't changed, so the results keep echoing. Different form, same frequency. And once you see that, something starts to loosen. Because if what you're experiencing now is not being created now, then you don't need to fight it in the same way. You don't need to panic, rush, or force immediate change. Those reactions are based on the assumption that everything is happening at once. But it's not. There is a delay. And within that delay, there is space. Space to choose a different internal state. Space to stop repeating the same emotional patterns. Space to observe without reinforcing what you don't want to continue. This doesn't mean you ignore your responsibilities or avoid action. It means your actions come from a different place. Not from urgency, but from clarity. Not from fear, but from intention. And when that shift begins, something subtle changes in how you experience time itself. You become less reactive to what is already formed and more attentive to what is forming. You stop chasing outcomes and start shaping direction. The illusion of linear time starts to lose its control over you because you no longer treat the present as a battlefield of problems. You start to see it as a point of influence. And from that point, a deeper realization begins to emerge. If what you see is not truly happening now, if it is just a delayed reflection of what has already been projected, then where is reality actually being generated? Where is the source that determines what appears next? At this point, common sense collapses completely, and the greatest shift of your existence must occur. You have been taught your entire life that you are a fragile, tiny being living inside a massive universe that could crush you at any moment. But the ultimate truth is the exact opposite. You are not inside the universe. The entire universe is happening inside you. The world does not happen to you, it happens from you. This idea can feel uncomfortable at first, almost too big to accept, because everything around you seems to suggest the opposite. Bills arrive from the outside. People speak and act independently. Situations appear without asking for your permission. It all looks external, separate, and often uncontrollable. That is the illusion at its most convincing level. It creates the feeling that you are surrounded by forces you must constantly respond to. It places you in a defensive position where your role is to manage, survive, and adapt to whatever shows up next. But if you look closely at your actual experience, everything you know about the world is happening within your awareness. Every sound, every image, every thought, every emotion, none of it exists for you outside of that field. You have never experienced anything out there directly. You have only experienced your perception of it, and that changes the entire structure of what you call reality. Because if everything is being processed and known within you, then your internal state is not just reacting to the world, it is shaping how the world appears in the first place. This doesn't mean you control every detail or that you can instantly change anything you want. That would be an oversimplification. But it does mean that the quality of your awareness influences the version of reality you consistently experience. Think of it like a lens. If the lens is tense, fearful, and reactive, the world appears fragmented, urgent, and difficult. If the lens is steady, clear, and grounded, the same world begins to organize differently. Not because the external instantly rearranges, but because your interaction with it changes at the root. And that interaction is what determines outcomes over time. The inversion here is subtle but powerful. Instead of asking, "Well, what is the world doing to me?" you begin to ask, "From what state am I meeting the world?" That question alone starts to dissolve part of the illusion, because it brings your attention back to the only place where influence actually exists, your own awareness. And from there, something interesting happens. You stop feeling like a passive participant. You begin to notice that your inner state is not fixed. It shifts depending on where you place your attention, how you interpret situations, and how quickly you react. This gives you a different kind of responsibility, not the heavy kind that feels like pressure, but a quiet awareness that your experience is not random. It is being filtered, shaped, and expressed through you. And when you start to live from that understanding, your relationship with problems changes. Instead of seeing them as external obstacles attacking you, you begin to see them as signals, reflections of patterns that are already active within your system, not as punishment, but as feedback. That shift alone reduces a lot of unnecessary struggle, because you stop fighting the surface and start paying attention to the source. The illusion depends on you staying focused on appearances. It keeps you busy trying to fix outcomes, adjust circumstances, control variables. But the moment you turn inward and examine the state from which you are perceiving, the dynamic changes. You are no longer chasing reality. You are participating in its formation. And this is where your power becomes practical, not in a dramatic or exaggerated way, but in small, consistent adjustments. The way you begin your day, the way you respond to tension, the way you hold your attention when nothing urgent is happening. These moments, which seem insignificant, are actually where the direction of your experience is set. Because if the world is happening from you, then the quality of what emerges next depends on the state you stabilize now. And this leads to a very concrete question. If your internal state is shaping how reality organizes itself, what would happen if you deliberately chose that state before the world has a chance to define it for you? It is precisely with this power that we deactivate that lethal mistake you make every morning. The daily danger was opening your eyes and immediately allowing the material illusion to dictate your emotional state. Starting tomorrow, your relief will be this. Do not open your physical eyes in the first 5 minutes of the day. Stay in the darkness of your mind, intensely vibrating gratitude for a prosperous life. It is in this invisible window that you force a new hologram to be born. At first, this might feel unusual. You're used to waking up and instantly reconnecting with the world, checking the time, your phone, your responsibilities. But those first moments are not neutral. They are highly sensitive. They are the point where your awareness is still soft, not fully locked into yesterday's patterns. And that is exactly why they matter. Before your senses fully engage, before the illusion rebuilds itself around you, there is a brief opening where your internal state can be set without interference. Most people lose this window without even noticing it. They rush into the day and allow external information to define how they feel. But if you stay with your eyes closed, something different becomes possible. You are no longer reacting, you are choosing. In that quiet space, bring your attention to a feeling. Not a thought, not a list of things you want to fix, but a genuine sense of gratitude. Not forced, not exaggerated, just steady. It could be as simple as appreciating that you are breathing, that you have another day, that something in your life is stable. Then slowly expand that feeling. Let it include things that have not yet happened physically. A sense of financial ease, a sense of clarity in your decisions, a sense of calm in situations that used to trigger you. You are not pretending these things already exist in front of you. You are allowing your internal state to align with them before the external world has a chance to contradict you. This is where the illusion begins to lose control, because instead of waiting for reality to give you a reason to feel stable, you are generating that stability first, and from that point, your perception starts to organize differently. It's subtle but powerful. When you eventually open your eyes, you are not stepping into the same mental environment as before. You are carrying a different baseline. The same situations may appear, but they don't hit you with the same intensity. You are less reactive, more observant, and that changes your behavior. You respond with more patience. You notice opportunities you would have ignored. You avoid unnecessary tension. Your actions become cleaner, less driven by pressure. And over time, these small differences begin to accumulate. This is how matter is rewritten, not in an instant, but through consistent shifts in how you meet each moment. The external world starts reflecting a different pattern, because the internal signal that shapes your perception has changed. But the key here is consistency. Doing this once might feel calming, but it won't immediately break the cycle. The illusion has been reinforced for years through repetition. So this new approach also needs repetition, but with awareness. Each morning becomes less about reacting and more about setting direction, and something else begins to happen as you continue. You start to notice how quickly the old patterns try to return. The moment you grab your phone too early, the moment you rush, the moment you allow external input to dominate your attention, you can feel the shift. The tension comes back. The urgency returns. This is not failure. This is feedback. It shows you how sensitive your system is to those first inputs. And once you see that clearly, you gain something valuable: choice. You are no longer completely automatic. You can catch yourself earlier. You can reset, even in the middle of the day, by briefly stepping back into that same internal posture. Steady, grounded, not driven by what appears in front of you. The illusion depends on immediacy. It needs you to react quickly, without space, without awareness. But when you slow down even slightly, you interrupt that process. And from that interruption, a different experience begins to form. One where effort feels lighter, where decisions feel clearer, where outcomes start to shift without the same level of struggle. And as this becomes more natural, another question begins to rise. If your internal state can quietly influence how reality organizes itself, what happens when you maintain that state, not just in the morning, but throughout your day? The moment you remove pure physical effort and position yourself as the unshakable consciousness, logical miracles begin to happen. Financial doors open, and toxic environments dissolve, not by magic, but because without the density of your internal resistance, the electrons of your circumstances are strictly compelled by the laws of physics to reorganize and reflect your peace. At first, this can sound exaggerated. You've been taught that effort is everything, that if you want something to change, you have to push harder, work longer, think more. And while effort has its place, most people confuse effort with tension. They are not the same. Tension comes from resistance. It comes from the belief that you are fighting against reality, trying to force it into a different shape. And that constant friction drains your energy and clouds your perception. It keeps you locked inside the illusion, where everything feels heavy and difficult. But when that resistance begins to fade, something unexpected happens. You don't stop acting. You don't become passive. Instead, your actions become more precise. You move at the right time, say the right words, notice details you would have missed before. It feels less like forcing and more like aligning. This is what people describe as a flow state. Not something mystical, but a condition where your internal noise is low enough that your awareness can operate clearly. In this state, you are not constantly reacting to every stimulus. You are not pulled in different directions by fear, urgency, or doubt. You are steady. And because of that, your interaction with the world changes. Situations that used to trigger stress no longer affect you in the same way. Conversations become easier, decisions feel lighter, even challenges seem more manageable, not because they disappeared, but because you are no longer amplifying them internally. The illusion begins to lose its complexity. What once looked like a tangled problem starts to look like a series of simple steps. What once felt overwhelming becomes something you can navigate without panic. And from the outside, this can look like luck. People might say things are just working out for you, that opportunities are appearing, that things are falling into place. But what they don't see is the internal shift that made those outcomes possible. Because when you are not resisting, you are more available. Available to notice, available to respond, available to adjust. And this availability creates momentum. Think about how many opportunities are missed, not because they weren't there, but because the mind was too occupied with worry or distraction to recognize them. When your attention is scattered, your reality feels fragmented. When your attention is clear, patterns start to emerge. You begin to see connections. You begin to act at the right moment instead of reacting too late or too early. This is not about controlling every detail of your life. It's about reducing the internal interference that distorts how you experience and respond to those details. And as that interference decreases, your environment starts to reflect that clarity. You might find that certain problems resolve with less effort than expected, that certain people no longer create the same tension, that decisions you once avoided now feel straightforward. Again, not because the world suddenly changed, but because your way of engaging with it did. The illusion depends on noise, on constant mental activity, emotional spikes, and reactive patterns. It thrives when you are overwhelmed, because in that state, you are easier to direct, easier to trap in repetitive cycles. But when you are grounded, present, and internally stable, that structure weakens. You are no longer feeding it in the same way. And this is where a deeper sense of confidence begins to form. Not the loud kind that needs to prove something, but a quiet certainty, a feeling that you can handle what comes, not by force but by clarity. That you don't need to rush or panic because you trust your ability to respond when necessary. From that place, life starts to feel different. Less like a struggle, more like a process you're part of. And as this becomes more consistent, something else naturally follows. You begin to move through situations, both simple and complex, with a kind of calm that doesn't depend on outcomes. And that calm changes how everything unfolds next. Absorbing the depth of this existential architecture makes you an unshakable person. You continue working, laughing, and interacting with matter, but nothing that happens outside has the power to control you. You begin to face monumental obstacles with the calm of someone who understands that everything is just energy waiting for instruction. You finally take the seat of the true architect of your story. From the outside, your life may not look dramatically different at first. You still go through your routines. You still handle responsibilities. You still encounter unexpected situations. But internally, something fundamental has shifted. You are no longer easily pulled. Before, every external event had the power to move you instantly. A message could change your mood. A problem could take over your thoughts. A delay could create tension that stayed with you for hours. It felt like you were constantly responding to a world that dictated your state. Now there is space. The same events happen, but they don't enter you in the same way. You see them, you register them, but you don't immediately merge with them. There is a quiet distance that allows you to choose how to engage. This is where mastery begins, not in controlling the world, but in no longer being controlled by it. The illusion depends on immediacy. It needs you to react without awareness, to be absorbed by appearances, to treat every situation as something that must define you. But when that automatic reaction is no longer there, the entire dynamic changes. You start to see the game board more clearly. Not as something mystical or abstract, but as patterns, movements, cause and effect unfolding over time. You begin to recognize that what once felt personal is often just mechanical. People act from their own patterns. Situations unfold from prior conditions. Not everything is about you, and not everything requires your emotional involvement. This realization brings a kind of relief, because you stop carrying what was never yours to carry. You stop trying to control every outcome, and instead you focus on what is actually within your reach, your attention, your state, your response. From that place, your actions become more intentional. You speak when it matters, not just when you feel triggered. You move when the moment is right, not when pressure forces you. You step back when needed without feeling like you are losing control. There is a quiet confidence in that, and people notice it, even if they don't understand it. Your presence feels different. Less reactive, more grounded. Less urgent, more precise. But more importantly, you notice it. You notice how situations that used to escalate now pass more smoothly, how conflicts lose intensity faster, how decisions become clearer when you are not rushing. It's not that challenges disappear, it's that they no longer destabilize you, and because of that, they don't grow in the same way. The illusion begins to lose its authority over your experience. It still presents images, still creates scenarios, still offers moments that could pull you back into old patterns. But now, there is awareness. You can see it happening. You can feel the moment where a reaction wants to start. And instead of being carried by it, you remain steady. This steadiness is not rigid, it's not forced, it's flexible, responsive, alive. You can still feel emotions, still care, still engage deeply with life. But those experiences no longer override your clarity. They move through you, not control you. And from that position, something powerful emerges. You begin to influence your environment without trying to dominate it. Your decisions carry more weight because they come from clarity. Your timing improves because you are not clouded by urgency. Your relationships shift because you are no longer reacting in predictable ways. This is what silent mastery looks like. Not loud, not visible in obvious ways, but consistent. And over time, this consistency builds something that feels almost effortless. Life begins to organize itself with less friction. Not perfectly, not without challenges, but with a different quality. A sense that things are unfolding rather than constantly resisting you. And as you continue to live from this place, one final layer starts to become clear. If the world has no power to control you unless you give it that power, if the illusion only holds weight when you believe in it and react to it, then what remains when you fully see through it? Matter can only hurt, scare, and exhaust you as long as you keep believing that it has a will of its own. Unveil the truth that the world you see is a pure illusion, the secret scroll. The veil of the material lie has just fallen, and your exhausting search for external solutions ends here. If the walls of reality silently obey your mind, what new world will you choose to project when you wake up tomorrow? This is where everything becomes simple again. Not easy, but clear. You stop chasing, stop forcing, stop trying to control every detail outside. And instead you return to the only place where change is real, your awareness. From there, life begins to respond differently. If you stayed until here, write in the comments, "I choose to see beyond the illusion." This shows you didn't just hear this, you felt it. And if this connected with you, watch one of the videos on your screen now. If you want to go deeper and support the channel, consider becoming a member. Exclusive content is coming soon.